Hey everybody, another gaming video, and yeah, we're talking about how much loot is too much. And yes, I've been playing with makeup again. That's part of the reason I'm making this video. It's Sunday night, but I'm like, I just spent all this time learning to use his colors. I'm gonna use it for something. So we're gonna talk about loot, because loot, like makeup, you can't have too much. And this is really borderline, and the balance looks entirely different. Even lighting. Anyway, so let's do the help support. This video is inspired by me trying to figure out why Silksong is driving me crazy. I'm up to an hour with my thumb. Hey, it still hurts, but gaming doesn't hurt nearly as much as using scissors. So I've determined, I'm going to the doctor on Tuesday, but I don't think they'll be able to do anything about it. I think that my GP, I'm going to have to ask my rheumatologist about it. But hey, it's worth a try because it probably is something to do with, joints. Woo. But yes, why Silksong is driving me so crazy, but Cuphead I absolutely love. They are both extremely difficult games. Why? Well, one, Cuphead, your progression paths are pretty obvious. You're not stumbling around going, where the fuck is all this stuff? But I realized it comes down to progression and loot. You know, the items that you unlock in game. With Cuphead, well, you earn coins to buy stuff that you use to, boost your play, and different weapons and charms work better on different bosses. But there's a very limited number of them compared to Silksong, where, and I thought about like putting in images and everything like that. I'm like, nah, fuck it. If you're interested, you can look it up. Compared to Silksong, there's all this junk that I don't use because with Cuphead, you can just swap out, go into the match, right? Go into the boss. With Silksong, you have to go to a bench, equip the shit, and then, run back to whatever it is you're doing. And most people seem to be sticking to, everybody loves the tacks, but tacks aren't good against airborne enemies. But really, there's just certain ones that people stick to once they get them, because that game's so spammy. That's the other thing I think about Silksong versus Cuphead. Yes, there's a lot going on a screen in Cuphead, but there aren't overlapping things going on very often, whereas, Silksong, the enemies are going all over the place and one explosion can overlap something else. I know that's the point, but I'm trying to figure out between these two really hard games, why is Cuphead so enjoyable and Silksong not so much? Scope is a big part of it, but I think also Silksong has the comparison to Hollow Knight that I really enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with that game, even though it too was hard. But, the best, to me, crests that determine, your move set in Silksong are Wanderer, which is the Hollow Knight moveset, or the closest thing to it, and then Reaper, which is sort of like a bigger sword, slower version of the Hollow Knight moveset. And so it's sort of disappointing that it takes so much longer to get used to new loadouts in Silksong that I think a lot of people just pick something and stick with it. As opposed to Cuphead, where sometimes I used the spread shooter, sometimes I used the one that boomerang back around you if you were being chased by a boss and you had to run. That was a great one. It was easier to figure out what worked on bosses as well, in part because the bosses in Cuphead are so big and they're such, ammo sinks that, it flashes, you're doing damage. Okay, this is working. Unlike Silksong, where it's so easy to just, there are fights where you can take 3 masks of damage at the same time. Right now, I'm actually doubling back to some areas to find more mask pieces because, oh my god, you need them. 6 is just not enough. I think it starts with 5. I don't remember, but I'm like, I need more masks because this is the only thing that makes sense. And but having all this stuff in my inventory that I don't use, like the bead collector and the shard collector, those are nearly useless items. Maybe early game, but after early game, they just sit in your inventory and they don't do squat. And the compass and 2 other things I end up using all the time. There are items I have picked up. I have no idea how they work. Not a clue. There's no ability to use them because, 1, they cost shards and those are limited. We don't have that problem in Cuphead. And I know that's a gameplay balance thing. It is frustrating because every experiment forces you to spend shards, which are a consumable that you then have to grind for or grind beads to buy shard bundles. And I think that frustration could be fixed with some sort of training room. That there are these little circus bugs or like carnival bugs who have you do little challenges. Like, just have them have some sort of room where you can try out your new items, your new shard items. Well, I've lost what all the various things are called. I remember crests, but what the yellow ones versus blue ones versus red equipables are, no, lost. Doesn't stay in my brain. But if there was a place to practice with them that didn't cost you, never mind the trial and error of, holy crap, how do I use this thing? I'm just constantly getting slaughtered. That would be better because it means you don't waste your precious, items, your tools. I think they're called tools. Figuring out what the fuck you're doing. And some people might go, get good. This is not a question of getting good. This is a question of grinding less, even though you're still gonna have to grind quite a bit. And I still think the map's too goddamn big, but that's an issue for another time. When it's just more items, it's just more. There's this mirror that's supposed to stun the bosses when you heal. Have I tried it? No, because I don't have the space on my crest to, use something like that. And that's a low priority compared to this little skull you put on your final heart. So, if you do double damage, you don't die on your last hit. And the really handy crystal sort of shadow of Hornet that appears if you get hit midair. Oh my god, that thing has been useful in so many fights. So, I've watched some videos of people who have played the game as well, and it does seem that they also are sticking to sort of 5 or 6 tools and offensive tools. I haven't seen anybody use the defensive tools. I mean, maybe if there was some sort of official game guide that told you where it was recommended, because the trial and error, I know that's the point, but oh my god, there's too much error and not enough trial in that game. And it really does come down that it costs you to learn how to use the stuff. And and grinding those shards, grinding anything. Oh my God, when you're not free roaming exploration, because also it's the Dark Souls thing of, oh, if you die twice before running back to where you died the last time, you lose all your beads. And beads buy you shards. Fuck me. Now there are little silk eater things in the game that you can eventually get that allow you a certain number of takebacks on that, which is nice. But overall, it's a pain. And with Elden Ring, there's the sense that, okay, you can always just farm more. You get far enough into a FromSoft game, especially Elden Ring, and there's just so many opportunities for getting those, I forget what you call them, but little light wispy things, but the in-game currency, that you'll always get more. It sucks, but anybody who's played those games enough are like, don't worry, more will come along. With Silksong, not only are the items expensive, there are some things you can only get through merchants, and you take a loss when you weave your beads into rosaries. I'm not sure why there's so much Catholic around right now, but they're Catholic bugs, apparently. Just kidding. But you lose 20 every time you string one. Now, I do that incessantly. I max out my rosaries, because if I get to, one of those vendors and something's $500, it's like, no problem, do-de-do-de-do-de-do-de-do. And it really cuts down on the frustration, because the other thing is vendors who need special items, they are scattered throughout an absolutely massive map, and they don't mark who's who, and there's no way for you to do it. You have to use a limited number of markers. There's no ability to write anything on it. So you're constantly going to the wiki and looking things up, and personally, I don't like that. I never looked up a single thing playing Cuphead. I watched a few Miss Chalice videos, because I wasn't very good with her when I started playing, and that was just because I was so used to playing Cuphead. But the fewer options, the lack of choice paralysis, the easy to figure out, hard to master elements of Cuphead, just to me work much better than the bug around and find out that's going on in Silksong. Now, you may not agree, and that's okay. I do think there's a certain amount of, I don't like games with a lot of visual spam. It's the same problem I have with the Hades games. When there's too much going on, it's like, ugh, and there's too much overlapping visual feedback. Visual feedback's a topic for another time. With Cuphead, everything tended to be very 2D. So it was very rare one animation would overlap another. So if you got hit, it felt fair. Silksong has a lot of shadow and light effects that make it hard to see what you're doing. And a huge pet peeve of mine in games, that unless you are a horror game, take away a person's, ability to either hear or see the game, unless you're trying to make it super accessible, very, very sparingly. And I find I can play Silksong sometimes better with the sound off. If I'm struggling on a boss, I just turn the sound off. It usually helps a lot. But not being able to see, because there's so many damn lava effects or ice effects or dark effects or blinding light effects. I know it's intentional, but it feels a lot cheaper. And when you are playing these games that are this challenging, the difference between a very satisfying experience and something that is just horrendously frustrating, it can be the difference in milliseconds or a little tweak here and there. And I wonder if, I don't know, maybe Cuphead had more playtesting, maybe because it was more inspired by kind of classic side scroller games. They use more tried and tested kind of animation cycles. But yeah, they're both side scroller combat games. One is more of a, run and gun with bosses. The other is more of a Metroidvania experience, but still the fact that they're both 2D gameplay, I think allows more of a side-by-side comparison than, Silksong and Elden Ring, which, let's face it, Elden Ring, if in doubt, level. If in doubt, swap out gear to another type. But not much. There's a ton of gear in Elden Ring, but you find your favorites and you stick with them. That's another game with too much loot. But I think because there is just there's classes to Elden Ring, so you need the kind of RPG loot everywhere, just because some people play different builds and you need, the weapons to match a myriad of playstyles. With Silksong, there aren't that many playstyles. It just feels like Silksong, because Hollow Knight was already there, they just wanted to make everything bigger, everything more. And sometimes more isn't better. I think that is generally the consensus, other than, oh my God, too many damn waved combat areas. In Silksong, you get locked in a room and then there's waves of enemies. I have come to hate those. They are overused. The bosses, I don't know why. At least with the bosses, I guess because they're unique, it's less of a chore and a bore to have a bunch of tries at those. But those, like lock, wave combat, I have gotten so bored with those fucking things that I actually find that I'm getting killed by boredom. And Cuphead doesn't have that because of the nature of the game. And so I just think that with indie games, part of the joy of them is sort of the conservation. I remember enjoying with Hollow Knight that, there were basic series of moves. And so it was more how you chain that kind of limited toolbox together to get through the thing. After a certain amount of time, there's just too many options, and people start using a walkthrough, and not in the way that, From Software creates their games to push people into community. Whether you like that or not, I don't know if I like it or not, but I know that is sort of a deliberate thing. But Silksong is a Metroidvania game. Those are games that I think you should be able to explore and figure out what the heck is going on. And there's so many options on so many things, so many areas that you have to come back to later, and you have no idea what you need to come back. It's too vague. There's just too many options of everything. But the loot, I guess because it's something you equip, like the tools and the this and the that. I think because it's something I'm swapping out and you can only swap them out at the bench, that clinched it for me. Why I enjoy Cuphead so much. And Silksong, there are moments. Sherma, I absolutely enjoy. I love that character. There's some very, very cute characters. The art design is amazing. But I really do think for this game to become as beloved as Hollow Knight, there's got to be more ways to learn how to use the loot. right? I mean, maps you can learn. The where is Styx or where is so and so. No problem. That can be solved for a walkthrough. But a walkthrough can't teach you how to use these tools. And there's just no way to learn how to use them without spending those bloody shards. And at this point, I've started to call them sharts because people complain about the beads in Silksong. I have no problem. I'm rich with beads. But the freaking shards, because there's only so many places that you can buy the shard bundles with the rosaries I am flush with, and you gotta run back to them. No, you can run out and then you gotta go back, and it is amazing how quickly you run out of those motherfuckers. And maybe it's just because I tend to use them regularly. But, and I've seen people who don't use them at all. And I've started to actually teach myself to get through these fights without relying on the tools just because of the fucking shards that I've started calling fucking sharts. And, I mean, hey, maybe I'm doing something wrong. But, again, I really liked Hollow Knight. I really liked Cuphead. There is something to just how much they tried to shove into Silksong that actually makes the game less enjoyable, not more. And again, it was looking at the inventory screen and getting another fucking tool that I'm like, I can't use this because I don't know what it does, and I don't want to waste consumables figuring out what it is when these other things I know how to use. It's obvious. Maybe I should just try it. And then there are some that don't take shards, and you have to run back to the person who gave it to you to freaking get a refill. And these places are not exactly near a fast travel point. It is just designed to confound you. And not like that King Dice fight in Cuphead, where it does feel like you've got to know how to play the game to get through the roulette wheel fight. And then the devil fight's no slouch either. But that feels like, yeah, you gotta learn to parry, you gotta learn to double jump, you gotta learn to do this stuff to get through that fight. That makes sense to me. The Silksong stuff, I don't know what they were thinking. So, if you're out there designing a game, you don't need to throw a bunch of stuff at the player to make a satisfying experience. Another game that's really good with minimal options chained together beautifully is Guacamelee. It's kind of old now, but that's another Metroidvania. So it's not that I don't love Metroidvanias, because I loved Guacamelee, but Guacamelee also saved its, horrendously difficult platforming levels for optional areas. Not something that is required to get the fucking double jump. That is just goddamn evil. Oh, the Mount Fay level. Oh, the Mount Fay level. I got through it. But holy shit. And again, that comes down to not just, I don't know what to do with this loot, but is it worth... I did that only because that was when I looked up. Where do you get the double jump? Oh, it's Mount Fay. Okay. But if I had looked it up, I wouldn't have bothered, because it's like, am I going to get to the top of this thing and then pick up something absolutely fucking useless? Because that was the last 4 pickups I got. So there's an issue, because loot is not just do cool stuff. Loot, when you earn it, is get cool stuff. And there's a sense of progression, especially in very hard games, especially in Metroidvanias. When you get a piece of loot, it's like, oh, okay, I'm advancing. this is obvious progress. And, you know, one of the things that other people I've seen have commented on is the fact that you'll get through some pretty tough bosses that drop nothing. Like, okay, yeah, it opens a door, but there's just something so disappointing about a boss dropping nothing. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to this channel if you like this sort of, hey, I understand my issue with this thing now type of videos. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.